Quiet Place, 2018 horror science fiction movie. A family struggles for survival in a world where most humans have been killed by a blind but noise sensitive creatures. They are forced to communicate in sign languages to keep the creatures at bay. Well, A Quiet Place is artfully plays an elemental fears with a ruthless, intelligent creature feature that is as original as it is scary and establishes director John Krasinski as a rising talent. This movie, Hereditary, 2018 horror drama. When the matriarch of the Graham family passes away, her daughter and grandchildren begin to unravel cryptic and increasingly terrifying secrets about their ancestry, trying to outrun the sinister fate they have inherited. Well, Hereditary uses its classic setup as a framework for harrowing, uncommonly unsettling horror film whose cold touches lingers beyond the closing credits. Next horror flick, Lights Out, 2016, when a bloodthirsty supernatural being that lurks in the shadows preys upon a family. A young woman must fight to protect herself, save her little half-brother, and uncover a mystery about her family's shadowy past. The consensus for the movie, Lights Out makes a skillful use of sturdy genre tropes and some terrific performance for an unsettling, fright-filled experience that delivers superior chills without skimping on story. Our next movie, Ready or Not, 2019. Ready or Not follows a young bride as she joins her new husband, rich eccentric family in a time-honored tradition that turns into a lethal game with everyone fighting for their own survival. Well, the critics have to say is that it's a smart, subversive and darkly funny. Ready or Not is a crowd-pleasing horror film with giddily entertaining. Next horror flick, Before I Wake, 2016. In this intense and heart-pounding supernatural thriller, Jesse and Mark decide to take in a sweet and loving 8-year-old boy, Cody. Unknown to them, Cody is terrified of falling asleep. At first, they assume its previous unstable home caused his aversion to sleep, but soon discover why Cody dreams manifest in reality as he sleeps. In one moment, they experience the incredible wonder of Cody's imagination, and in the next, the horrific nature of his night terrors. To save their new family, Jesse and Mark embark on a dangerous hunt to uncover the truth behind Cody's nightmare. Next horror movie, Pet Sematary, 2019. This movie is based on a seminal horror novel by Stephen King. Pet Sematary follows Dr. Louis Creed, who after relocating with his wife Rachel and their 2 young children from Boston to rural Maine, discover a mysterious burial ground hidden deep in the woods just near the family's new home. When tragedy strikes, Louis turns to his unusual neighbor, Jude Crandall, setting off a perilous chain reaction that unleashes an unfathomable evil with horrific consequences. The consensus for the movie is Pet Sematary takes its source material in a few different directions, but this remake feels like an exhuming almost as often as it does like a revival. Next horror and thriller flick, Us, 2019. A woman returning to her beachside childhood home with a husband and 2 kids, haunted by an unexplainable and unresolved trauma from a past and compounded by a string of eerie coincidences. Her paranoia elevates to a high alert as she grows increasingly certain that something bad is going to befall her family. When the darkness falls, they discover the silhouette of 4 figures holding hands as they stand in the driveway. Us pits an endearing American family against a terrifying and uncanny opponent, doppelgangers of themselves. Our next movie, Get Out, 2017 horror thriller. Our protagonist, Chris, an African-American man, decides to visit his Caucasian girlfriend's parents during a weekend getaway. Although they seem normal at first, he's not prepared to experience the horrors ahead. Well, it's funny, scary, and thought-provoking. Get Out seamlessly weaves its trenchant social critics into a brilliant, effective, and entertaining horror comedy thrill ride. Next movie, It, 2017 horror movie. This is about 7 helpless and bullied children are forced to face their worst nightmares when Pennywise, the antagonist, a shape-shifting clown, reappears. The clown lives in the sewers and targets small innocent children. Well, the consensus is it's a well-acted and friendship-frightening with an emotionally affecting story at its core. It amplifies the horror in Stephen King's classic story without losing touch with its heart. The Invisible Man, 2020 year mystery science fiction. Well, the The antagonist, after staging his own suicide, crazed scientist uses his power to become invisible to stalk and terrorize his ex-girlfriend, who is the protagonist. When the police refuse to believe her story, she decides to take matter in her own hands and fight back. Well, my opinion on this is it's smart, well acted, and above all scary movie. The Invisible Man proves that sometimes the classic source material for a fresh reboot can be hiding just in plain sight. Next thriller movie, Happy Death Day 2017. Blumhouse produces an original and inventive rewinding thriller in Happy Death Day, in which a college student, Jessica Roth, relives the day of a murder with both its unexceptional details and terrifying end until she discovers her killer's identity. Happy Death Day is directed by Christopher Landon and written by Scott Lobdell. Our next horror and thriller flick, Dr. Sleep 2019. Dr. Sleep is the continuation of Danny Torrance's story 40 years after the terrifying events of Stephen King's The Shining movie. Still scarred by the trauma he endured as a child at the Overlook, Dan Torrance has fought to find some semblance of peace, but that peace is shattered when he encounters Abra, a courageous teenager with her own powerful extrasensory gift known as the Shine. Instinctively, recognizing that Dan shares her power, Abra has sought him out, desperate for his help against the merciless Rose the Hat and her followers, the True Knot, who feed off the shine of innocence in their quest for immortality. Forming an unlikely alliance, Dan and Abra engage in a brutal life-or-death battle with Rose. Abra's innocence and fearless embrace of her shine compel Dan to call upon his own powers as never before, at once facing his fears and reawakening. Our next movie, Gerald's Game 2017. Movie generates drama, horror, mystery and suspense. Gerald and his wife Jessie attempt to rekindle the flames of the marriage with a retreat to their remote lake house. But when a dangerous sex game accidentally kills Gerald and leaves Jessie handcuffed to the bed, the latter is forced to overcome panic and hallucinations if she wants to escape. Based on the novel by Stephen King, Gerald's Game was directed by Mike Flanagan. Well, critics have to say it's a small-scale suspense with a career-defining performance. Our next in the list, Don't Breathe 2016 horror thriller movie. A troika of robbers barges into the house of a visually impaired veteran after hearing that he has won a prize money. Soon they realize, much to their horror, that the old man is not at their mercy, but they are at his mercy. Well, the general consensus, Don't Breathe smartly twists its sturdy premise to offer satisfyingly tense, chilling addition to the home invasion genre that's all more effective for its simplicity. Coming to the next movie, Hush 2016 horror thriller. Here our protagonist, a deaf writer who retreated into the woods to live a solitary life, must fight for a life in silence when a masked killer appears in her window. Well, Hush navigates the bloody waters of home invasion, thrillers and incisive slashers for a contemporary horror puree. Next movie, Split 2016 thriller. Kevin, the antagonist who is suffering from dissociative identity disorder and has 23 alter egos, kidnaps 3 teenagers. Now they must figure out his friendly persona before he unleashes his 24th personality. Well, the general consensus on the movie is Split serves as a dramatic tour de force for James McAvoy in multiple roles, and finds writer-director M. Night Shyamalan returning resoundingly to thriller form. Our next flick is a mix of genre like action, adventure, horror, mystery and suspense, Legion 2010. A group of strangers in an out-of-the-way eatery who become the first line of defense when God, believing the human race is no longer worthy of him, he decides to end their existence. This motley crew only spiritual ally is the Archangel. Our next flick, horror and fantasy. Movie Constantine 2005. An ordinary man with an extraordinary gift must save the planet from evil in this action-packed fantasy. Unknown to most people, the world is crowded with spirits, both good and evil, who walk among us in human guise. One of the few who can see these spirits is John Constantine, the protagonist. But the responsibility of his vision is more than he can stand, and he tries to kill himself. Saved from death, Constantine must now atone for his action by acting as a guardian in the middle ground between paradise and hell. Our next flick, Apostille, 2018, movie genre mystery and suspense. London 1905 prodigal son Thomas Richardson has returned home only to learn that his sister is being held for ransom by a religious cult. Determined to get her back at any cost, Thomas travels to the idyllic island where the cult lives under the leadership of a charismatic prophet, Malcolm. As Thomas infiltrates the island's community, he learns that the corruption of the mainland society that they claim to reject has infested the cult's ranks nonetheless, and uncovers a secret far more evil than he could have imagined. Written and directed by Gareth Evans, is a harrowing occult fable where the only thing more horrifying than madness is the sinister reality behind it. Critics' consensus: Apostille resists easy scares in favor of a steady, slow-building descent into dread led by a commanding central performance from Dan Stevens. The Hunt, 2020. 12 strangers wake up in a clearing. They don't know where they are or how they got there. They know they have been chosen for a very specific purpose: the hunt. In the shadow of dark internet conspiracy theory, a group of globalist elites gather for the very first time at a remote manor house to hunt humans for sport. But the elites' master plan is about to be derailed because one of the hunted, Crystal, the protagonist, knows the hunter's game better than they do. She turns the table on the killers, picking them off one by one as she makes her way towards the mysterious woman who's the antagonist. The consensus for the movie: The Hunt is successfully enough as a darkly humorous action thriller, but it shoots wide of the mark when it aims for timely social satire.